get rolling. Let's be on the record in case number 2019-CR1319, captioned State of Kansas versus Vanruss Robinson. Would the parties announce their appearances, please?
May it please the court, the state appears by Zoom via Taylor Hines, Assistant District Attorney.
May it please the court, the defendant appears in person with counsel David Pachkan, also by Zoom.
All right, we are here set down for a plea hearing today. The parties advised the court there was a preliminary hearing in this case, so we can just move forward with the plea. Mr. Robinson, I'm sure that your lawyers told you this, but here's what we're going to do today. I have to ask you a bunch of questions. If I ask you something that you don't understand, you tell me that, and you and I will talk about it till we're sure we're on the same page. If at any time you want to talk to Mr. Patricant before you answer one of my questions, you just tell me that. He'll mute the microphone. Even if I was a lip reader, I wouldn't be able to read your lips with the masks on. And you all can talk about what you need to talk about and then unmute when you're ready to go. Any questions about any of that?
No, sir.
All right. Now to get started, I have to have you sworn in. So if you'd raise your right hand, my court reporter will swear you
in. You solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right. Now, you're kind of muffled there, obviously, with the mask. So try and keep your voice up as much as possible. Every now and then, my court reporter might have to butt in if she doesn't understand what you're saying, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. So how far did you go in school, Mr. Robinson?
12th grade.
You read and write okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. As you sit here today, are you under the influence of any alcohol, drugs, or prescription medicine that might cloud your mind, keep you from understanding what you're doing?
No, sir.
All right. Feel like your mind's clear today?
Yes, sir.
Do you know what you're charged with?
Yes, sir.
All right. And you understand you don't have to change your plea from not guilty to guilty. You could maintain your not guilty plea, and you would have an absolute right to a jury trial in this case. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
At that trial, the state would have to prove you guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. You wouldn't have to prove anything yourself. Mr. Patricant would help you throughout that trial. He could confront, cross-examine all of the state's witnesses, challenge their evidence. He could call any witnesses that you wanted called, and if they didn't want to come to court, he could use subpoena power to make them come. You would have a right to testify, but you'd also have a right not to testify. And if you decided not to take the stand, the state couldn't use that against you. In other words, Ms. Hines here couldn't get up and argue to the jury, well, you should find him guilty because he didn't get up and tell you his side of it. Do you understand all that?
Yes, sir.
I couldn't hear you, Mr. Robinson. You understand all that?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you. Now, if we did that, we had that trial, and at the end of the trial, you were found guilty, you would have a right to appeal that conviction to the appellate courts. If you didn't have money to do that, a lawyer would be appointed to do it for you. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, if we do this plea today and I accept it, you're going to be giving up all those rights. There's not going to be a trial of any kind in this case. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
All right. I'm going to share right now the plea petition that Mr. Patricant sent me.
Judge, just for a second, I just want to say I do have his copy here signed, which I'll be sending over as soon as we're done here.
Fantastic. All right. So can you see that document that I put up here, Mr. Robinson?
Yes, sir.
All right. Is that the plea petition you have in front of you that Mr. Patricant went over with you?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now I'm going down here to the part that spells out the agreement. It says that you're going to be pleading guilty to count 1. That's fleeing or attempting to elude a police officer. That is a severity level 9 person felony. The state's going to dismiss all the rest of the charges. The parties are going to agree to recommend to the court that your sentence be the time served, given that you've served 266 days in the jail. You understand that the state won't be bound by the terms of the plea if you charge with any new crimes between now and sentencing or don't show up for your sentencing. Is that your understanding of the entire plea agreement, Mr. Robinson?
Yes, sir.
Anybody promise you anything else to get you to plead guilty today?
No, sir.
Anybody place any force or threats against you to make you plead guilty today?
No, sir.
All right. Now, it looks like the parties are going to recommend this sentence. It seems like a reasonable recommendation. But you understand that I'm not a party to any kind of plea agreement or bound by the recommendations, and I can give you any sentence that the law allows me to give you. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
All right. So do we have an understanding of what Mr. Robinson's criminal history score is going to be?
Yes, Your Honor, we believe it to be a C.
Is that right, Mr. Petricott?
Believe so, Judge, yes.
All right. So the parties sound like they're pretty confident that you're a C. Now, we'll know that for sure when the pre-sentence investigation comes out. But for right now, I have to assume that you're the very worst criminal history. That would be A, so that I can advise you what the maximum penalty that anybody can get for this crime is. I scrolled up to it here on the document, and I'll tell you it's 17 months in prison, a fine of $100,000, and post-release of 12 months. You understand that that's the maximum sentence that anybody can get for this case?
Yes, sir.
All right. Do you have any questions for me, Mr. Robinson, about anything that we've gone over today?
No, sir.
All right. And given all of this, do you still want to go forward with this plea?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Patricott, do you know any legal reason why your client should not plead?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Then I'll ask you, Mr. Robinson, as to count one, that's fleeing and eluding a police officer, a severity level 9 person felony. How do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
All right. Now I'm going to ask Ms. Hines to tell us what she thinks the evidence would be if this case went to trial. I need you to listen closely because when she's done, I'm going to ask you if that's what happened. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Hines.
Yes, Your Honor. As we previously mentioned, this case did go to prelim and evidence was heard at prelim. So I'll briefly sum up what was presented there and what would have been presented at trial. On November 21st of 2019, around 8:25 p.m. in the area of North 10th Street and Grandview Boulevard here in Kansas City, Wyandotte County, Kansas, Kansas City, Kansas police officers Mumphrey and Pleshka were in their marked KCK patrol vehicle with working lights and sirens, and they attempted a traffic stop on a 2009 red Jeep Liberty with a Kansas tag for running a red light and not turning. The driver of that vehicle was later identified as the defendant, Mr. Vanruss Robinson, in this case, who's here on Zoom. As Officer Mumphrey and Pleshka were attempting to initiate a traffic stop on the defendant's vehicle, he did not yield to their lights and audible siren. When they were attempting to initiate that traffic stop, the vehicle kept driving and sped up faster down in that area of 11th and Sandusky Avenue, and then it struck an unoccupied vehicle in that area. But I will go through the traffic violations in detail here that are the basis for the eluding. On North 10th Street to North 13th Street, when the defendant was traveling on Grandview Boulevard, he was speeding, going 65 in a 30-mile-per-hour zone. Then again on North 13th Street and Grandview Boulevard, he was driving left of the center line. On North 13th Street and Grandview Boulevard again, he did not use a turn signal to get off of Grandview Boulevard. On North 13th Street and Sandusky Avenue, he did not use a turn signal again. On North 11th Street to North 13th Street, while traveling on Sandusky, the defendant was speeding, going 55 in a 30-mile-per-hour zone. On North 11th Street and Sandusky Avenue, the defendant ran a stop sign, and at 1051 Sandusky Avenue is where the defendant hit the unoccupied vehicle that was parked on the side of the road there and continued to travel. So that, of course, is a traffic violation for the hit and run. There are at least 5 moving violations here for the basis of the eluding and the alternative on count 1. And also there's plenty of a factual basis to prove the original count 1 causing the accident. But I will just clarify that the vehicle that officers Pleshka and Mumphrey were in was a marked KCK Police Department vehicle. They gave visual and audible signs through their lights and sirens, and the defendant did fail to yield or pull over when they did so. And that all occurred, the addresses I gave, in the streets of 10th, 13th, Grandview, Sandusky, that all was in Wyandotte County, Kansas.
All right, thank you. Mr. Robinson, is that what happened in this case?
Yes, sir.
All right. I will find the defendant has freely, voluntarily, and intelligently changed his plea to one of guilty. He understands the nature of the charges and the consequences of the plea. The state has provided a sufficient factual basis for a finding of guilt, and the defendant has acknowledged that factual basis. Therefore, I will find he is in fact guilty of count 1, the fleeing and eluding charge, a severity level 9 person felony. Per the plea agreement, the other charges are dismissed. I'm ordering a pre-sentence investigation be prepared, and I can set this for sentencing on May 7th at 10 a.m. Mr. Patrick, you have my 9 a.m. I assume that this one's okay too.
Yes, sir.
All right. So,
And Your Honor,
Miss,
is that via Zoom or in person?
a Zoom.
Okay.
All right. So, Mr. Robinson, I need to advise you that as a convicted felon, it's prohibited for you to own or possess a firearm. Certain kind of deadly cutting instruments like dirks, daggers, switchblades, basically knives that could be considered deadly weapons. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Hines, I don't know if your signature's on it. Have you had a chance to review the plea petition, and may I put on it approved electronically when I submit it?
Yes, Your Honor, I have had an opportunity to review the plea petition, and my signature isn't on it just because I didn't get the original copy, but I do approve.
Okay. All right. I'll just make note of that when you send it over to me, Mr. Patrick, and I will submit the PSI request to probation and have the plea petition filed. Other things for our record today.
Not that I don't have anything, Your Honor.
Nothing from defense, Judge.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.